Welcome back to the real Berengia. We're almost done with the last book. Things are getting more interesting because Berengia found out that Jagar Thorn, or the Nightingale, is acting as Uriel Septim. That's the story of the Uriel Septim in Oblivion, and I think it's handled in the first Elder Scrolls game Arena. So let's see what happens next. What must she do? Berengia impelled the children ahead of her, a hand on each shoulder, trying to stay cool, collected, her ladies-in-waiting and personal knights escort trailing behind. Finally they reached their waiting carriage. Even though their suite of rooms was only a few blocks from the palace, royal dignity forbade travel on foot for even short distances, and for once Berengia was glad of it. The carriage seemed a kind of refuge now, false as she knew the feeling must be. A boy dashed up to one of the guards and handed him a scroll, then pointed toward the carriage. The guard brought it to her. The boy waited, eyes wide and shining. The epistle was brief and complimentary, and simple inquired if King Edward of Wayrest of the province of High Rock might be granted an audience with the famed Queen Berengia of Mournhold, as he had heard much of her and would be pleased to make her acquaintance. Berengia's first impulse was to refuse. She wanted only to leave the city. Certainly she had no inclination toward any dalliance with a dazzled human. She looked up, frowning, and one of the guards said, "My lady, the boy says his master awaits your reply yonder." She looked in the direction indicated and saw a handsome elderly man on horseback, surrounded by half-dozen courtiers and cavaliers. He caught her eye and bowed respectfully, taking off a plumed hat. "Very well," Berengia said to the boy on impulse. "Tell your master he may call on me tonight, after the dinner hour." King Edward looked polite and grave and rather worried, but not in the least love-struck. At least that was something, she thought pensively. Berengia stood at the tower window, waiting. She could sense the familiar's nearness, but though the night sky was clear as day to her eyes, she could not yet see him. Then suddenly he was there, a swift-moving dot beneath the wispy night clouds. A few more minutes and the great nighthawk finished its descent, wings folding, talons reaching her for her thick leather armband. She carried the bird to its perch, where it waited, panting, as her impatient fingers felt for the message secured in the capsule on one leg. The hawk drank mightily from the water till when she had done, then ruffled its feathers and preened, secure in her presence. A tiny part of her consciousness shared its satisfaction at a job well done, mission accomplished and rest earned. Yet beneath it all was unease. Things were not right, even to its humble avian mind. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the thin parchment and pored over the cramped writing. "Not Simicus' bold hand," Berengia said slowly, fingers smoothing the document while she prepared her mind and body to accept disaster calmly. If disaster it would be. Disaster it was. The Imperial Guard had deserted Simicus and joined the rebels. Simicus was dead. The remaining loyal troops had suffered a decisive defeat. Simicus was dead. The rebel leader had been recognized as King of Mournhold by Imperial envoys. Simicus was dead. Berengia and the children had been declared traitors to the Empire and a price set on their heads. Simicus was dead. So the audience with the Emperor earlier that morning had been nothing but a blind ruse. A charade. The Emperor must have already known. She was just being strung along, told to stay put, to take things easy. "My Lady Queen, enjoy the Imperial City and the delights it has to offer. Do make your stay as long as you want." Her stay, her detention, her captivity, and in all probability her impending arrest. She had no delusions about her situation. She knew the Emperor and his minions would never let her leave the Imperial City ever again, at least not alive. Simicus was dead. "My lady," Berengia jumped, startled by the servant's approach. "What is it?" "The Breton is here, my lady, King Edward," the woman added helpfully, noting Berengia's incomprehension. She hesitated. "Is there news, my lady?" she said, nodding toward the Nighthawk. "Nothing that will not wait," Berengia said quickly, and her voice seemed to echo in the emptiness that suddenly yawned like a gaping abyss inside her. "See to the bird." She stood up, smoothed her gown, and prepared to attend on a royal visitor. She felt numb as the stone walls around her, numb as the quiescence of the night air, numb as a lifeless corpse. Simicus was dead. King Edward greeted her gravely and courteously, if a bit fulsomely. He claimed to be a fervent admirer of Simicus, who figured prominently in his family's legends. Gradually he turned the conversation to her business with the Emperor. He inquired after details and asked if the outcome had been favorable to Mournhold. Finding her non-committal, he suddenly blurted out, My lady queen, you must believe me. The man who claims himself the emperor is an impostor. I know it sounds mad, but I... No, Berengia said, with sudden decisiveness. You are entirely correct, my lord king. I know. Edwire relaxed into his seat for the first time, eyes suddenly shrewd. You know? You're not just humoring someone you might think a madman? I assure you, my lord, I am not. She took a deep breath. And who do you surmise is dissembling as the emperor? The Imperial battle mage, Jagar Tharn. Ah, my lord king, have you perchance heard of someone called the Nightingale? Yes, my lady, as a matter of fact I have. My allies and I believe him to be one and the same man as the renegade Tharn. I knew it. Berengia stood up and tried to mask her upheaval. The Nightingale, Jagar Tharn. Oh, but the man was a demon, diabolical and insidious, and so very clever. He had contrived their downfall seamlessly, perfectly. Symmachus, my Symmachus. Edward coughed diffidently. My lady, we need your aid. Berengia smiled grimly at the irony. I do believe I should be the one saying those words, but go on, please. Of what assistance might I be, my lord king? Quickly the monarch outlined a plot. The mage Rhea Silmain, of late apprentice to the vile Jagar Tharn, had been killed and declared a traitor by the false emperor. Yet she had retained a bit of her powers and could still contact a few of those she had known well on the mortal plane. She had chosen a champion who would undertake to find the Staff of Chaos, which had been hidden by the treacherous sorcerer in unknown site. Those are the events of the Elder Scrolls Arena. The champion was to wield the staff's power to destroy Jagar Tharn, who was otherwise invulnerable, and rescue the true emperor being held prisoner in another dimension. However, the champion, while thankfully still alive, now languished in the Imperial dungeons. Tharn's attention must be diverted, while the chosen one gained freedom with Rhea's spirit's help. Berengia had the false emperor's ears and seemingly his eyes. Would she provide the necessary distraction? I suppose I could obtain another audience with him, Berengia said carefully, but would that be sufficient? I must tell you that my children and I have just recently been declared traitors to the Empire. In Mournhold perhaps, my lady, and Morrowind. Things are different in the Imperial City and the Imperial Province. The same administrative morass that makes it near impossible to obtain an audience with the Emperor and his ministers also quite assures you that you would never be unlawfully imprisoned or otherwise punished without benefits of due legal process. In your case, my lady, and your children's, the situation is further exacerbated by a royal rank. As queen and heirs apparent, your persons are considered inviolable. Sacrosanct, in fact. The king grinned. The imperial bureaucracy, my lady, is a double-edged claymore. So, at least she and the children were safe for the time being. Then a thought struck her. My lord king, what did you mean earlier when you said I had the false emperor's eyes, and seemingly at that? Edward looked uncomfortable. It was whispered among the servants that Jagar Tharn kept your likeness in a sort of shrine in his chambers. I see. Her thoughts wandered momentarily to that insane romance of hers with the Nightingale. She had been madly in love with him. Foolish woman. And the man she had once loved had caused to be killed the man she truly did love. Loved. He's gone now. He... She still couldn't bring herself to accept the fact that Symmachus was dead. But even if he is, she told herself firmly, my love is alive and remains. It would always be with her, as would the pain of living the rest of her life without him, the pain of trying to survive each day, each night without his presence, his comfort, his love, the pain of knowing he would never see his children grow into a fine pair of adults who would never know their father, how brave he was, how strong, how wonderful, how loving, especially little Morgaya. And for all you have done to my family, Nightingale, you must die. Does that surprise you? Edward's words broke into her thoughts. What? Does what surprise me? Your likeness in Tharn's room. Oh, her features set imperturbably. Yes and no. Edward could see from her expression that she wished to change the subject. He turned once again to her plans. Our chosen one may need a few days to escape, my lady. Can you gain him a bit more time? You trust me in this, my lord king? Why? We are desperate, my lady. We have no choice. But even if we did, why, yes. Yes, I would trust you. I do trust you. Your husband has been good to my family over the years. The Lord Symmachus is dead. What? Berengia related the recent events quickly and coolly. My lady, queen, but how dreadful. I am so sorry. For the first time, Berengia's glacial poise was shaken. In the face of sympathy, she felt her outward calm start to crumble. She gathered her composure and willed herself to stillness. Under the circumstances, my lady, we can hardly ask. Nay, good my lord. Under the circumstances, I must do what I may to avenge myself upon the murderer of my children's father. A single tear escaped the fortress of her eyes. She brushed it away impatiently. In return, I ask only that you protect my orphan children, as you may. Edward drew himself up. His eyes shone. Willingly do I so pledge, most brave and noble queen. The gods of our beloved land, indeed Tamriel itself, be my witnesses. His words touched her absurdly, yet profoundly. I thank you for my heart and my soul, good my lord King Edward. You have mine and my children's everlasting regret. She broke down. She did not sleep that night, but sat in a chair beside her bed, hands folded in her lap, thinking deep and long into the waxing and waning of the darkness. She would not tell the children, not yet, not until she must. She had no need to seek another audience with the Emperor. A summons arrived at first light. She told the children she expected to be gone a few days, bade them give the servants no trouble, and kissed them goodbye. Morgaya whimpered a bit. She was bored and lonely in the Imperial city. Helsteth looked dour, but said nothing. It was very like his father. His father. At the Imperial Palace, Berenzia was escorted not into the great audience hall, but to a small parlor, where the Emperor sat at a solitary breakfast. He nodded a greeting and waved his hand toward the window. Magnificent view, isn't it? Berenzia stared out over the towers of the great city. It dawned on her that it was the very chamber where she had first met Tiber Septim all those years ago. Centuries ago, Tiber Septim, another man she had loved. Who else had she loved? Symmachus, Tiber Septim, and Straw. She remembered the big blonde stable boy with sudden and intense affection. She never realized it till now, but she had loved Straw. Only she had never let him know. She had been so young then. Those had been carefree days, halcyon days. Before everything, before all this, before him. Not Symmachus, the nightingale. She was shocked in spite of herself. The man could still affect her, even now, even after all that had happened. A strong wave of inchoate emotion swept over her. When she turned back at last, Uriel Septim had vanished, and the nightingale sat in his place. You knew, he said quietly, scanning her face. You knew instantly. I wanted to surprise you. You might at least have pretended. Berenzia spread her arms, trying to pacify the maelstrom churning deep beside her. I'm afraid my skill at pretense is no match for yours, my liege. He sighed. You're angry. Just a little, I must admit, she said icily. I don't know about you, but I find betrayal a trifle offensive. How human of you. She took a deep breath. What do you want of me? Now you are pretending. He stood up to face her directly. You know what I want of you. You want to torment me. Go ahead, I'm in your power, but leave my children alone. No, 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 I don't want that at all, Berenzia. He came near, speaking low in the old caressing voice that had sent shivers cascading through her body. The same voice that was doing the same thing to her here and now. Don't you see? This was the only way. His hands closed on her arms. She felt her resolve fading, her disgust at him weakening. You could have taken me with you. Unbidden tears gathered in her eyes. He shook his head. I didn't have the power. Ah, but now I have it all. Mine to have, mine to share, mine to give, to you. He once more waved his hand toward the window and then the city beyond. All Tamriel is mine to lay at your feet, and that is only the beginning. It's too late, you left me to him. He is dead, the peasant's dead. A scant few years, what do they matter? The children can be adopted by me, and we'll have others together, Berenzia. Oh, and wait, children they'll be. What things we shall pass on to them. Your beauty and my magic. I have powers you haven't even dreamt of. None of your most untamed imaginings. He moved to kiss her. She slipped his grasp and turned away. I don't believe you. You do, you know. You're still angry, that's all. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tell me what you want, Berenzia. Berenzia, my beloved. Tell me, it shall be yours. She's falling again for him? A whole life flashed in front of her. The past, the present, and the future still to come. Different times, different lives, different Berenzias. Which one was the real one? Which one was the real Berenzia? The title of the book. For by that choice she would determine the shape of her fate. She made it, she knew. She knew who the real Berenzia was and what she wanted. A walk in the garden, my liege, she said. A song or two, perhaps. The nightingale laughed. You want to be courted? And why not? You do it so well. It's been long, besides since I have the pleasure. He smiled. As you wish, my lady Queen Berenzia. Your wish is my command. He took her hand and kissed it, now and forever. And so they spent their days in courtship, walking, talking, singing and laughing together, while the Empire's business was left to subordinates. "I'd like to see the staff," Berengia said idly one day. "I only had a glimpse of it, you'll recall." He frowned. "Nothing would give me greater pleasure or heart's delight, but that would be impossible." "You don't trust me?" Berengia pouted, but softened her lips when he leaned over for a kiss. "Nonsense, love. Of course I do, but it isn't here," he chuckled. "In fact, it isn't anywhere." He kissed her again, more passionately this time. "You're talking in riddles again. I want to see it. You couldn't have destroyed it." "Ah, you've gained in wisdom since we last met." "You inspired my hunger for knowledge somewhat." She stood up. "The Staff of Chaos can be destroyed, and it can be removed from Tamriel, not without the direct consequences to the land itself." "Ah, you impress me, my love. All true. It is not destroyed, and it is not removed from Tamriel, and yet, as I said, it isn't anywhere. Can you solve the puzzle?" He pulled her to him, and she leaned into his embrace. "Here's a greater riddle still," he whispered. "How does one make one of two? That I can and will show you." Their bodies merged, limbs tangled together. Later, when they had drawn a bit apart and he lay dozing, she thought sleepily. One of two, two of one, three of two, two of three. What cannot be destroyed or banished might be split apart, perhaps. She stood up, eyes blazing. She started to smile. The Nightingale kept a journal. He scribbled entries onto it every night after quick reports from underlings. It was locked in a bureau, but the lock was a simple one. She had, after all, been a member of the Thieves Guild in a past life, in another life, another Berengia. I like the fact that Berengia has more jobs than one, because whenever you play an Elder Scrolls character, you're bound to be in every guild and do all kinds of stuff. One morning, Berengia managed to sneak a quick look at it while he was occupied at his toilet. She discovered that the first piece of the Staff of Chaos was hidden in an ancient dwarvish mine called Fang Lair, although its location was given only in the vaguest of terms. The diary was crammed with jotted events in an odd shorthand and was very hard to decipher. All Tamriel, she thought, in his hands and mine, and more perhaps, and yet, for all its exterior charm, there was a cold emptiness where his heart should have been, a vacuum of which he was quite unaware, she thought. One could glimpse it now and then when his eyes would go blank and hard, and yet, though he had a different concept of it, he yearned for happiness too, and contentment. Peasant dreams, Berengia thought, and straw flashed before his eyes again, looking lost and sad. And then Theris, with a feline Khajiit smile. Tiber Septim, powerful and lonely. Symmachus, solid, stolid Symmachus, who did what ought to be done, quietly and efficiently. The Nightingale, a riddle and a certainty, both the darkness and the light. The Nightingale who would rule all and more, and spread chaos in the name of order. Berengia got reluctant leave from him to visit her children, who had yet to be told of their father's death, and of the Emperor's offer of protection. She finally did, and it wasn't easy. Morgaya clung to her for what seemed an era, sobbing wretchedly, while Helseth ran off into the garden to be alone, afterward refusing all her attempts to speak to him on the subject of his father, or even to let her hold him to her breast. Edward called on her while she was there. She told him what she had discovered so far, explaining that she must remain a while yet and learn more as she could. The Nightingale teased her about her elderly admirer. He was quite aware of Edward's suspicion, but he wasn't the least bit perturbed, for no one took the old fool seriously. Berengia even managed to arrange a reconciliation of sorts between them. Edward publicly recanted his misgivings, and his old friend the Emperor forgave him. He was afterward invited to dine with them at least once a week. The children liked Edward, even Helseth, who disapproved of his mother liaison with the Emperor and consequently detested him. He had become surly and temperamental as the days passed, and frequently quarrelled with both his mother and her lover. Edward was not happy with the affair either, and the Nightingale took great delight at times in openly displaying his affection for Berengia just to nettle the old man. They could not marry, of course, for Uriel Septim was already married, at least not yet. The Nightingale had exiled the Emperor shortly after taking the Emperor's place, but had not dared harm her. She was given sanctuary by the Temple of the One. It had been given out that she was suffering from ill health, and rumors had been circulated by the Nightingale's agents that she had mental problems. The Emperor's children had likewise been dispatched to various prisons all across Tamriel disguised as schools. "She'll grow worse in time," Nightingale said carelessly, referring to the Empress and eyeing Berengia's swollen breasts and swelling belly with satisfaction. As for their children, well, life is full of hazards, isn't it? will be married. Your child will be my true heir." He did want a child, Berengia was sure of that. She was far less sure, however, of his feelings for her. They argued continually now, often violently, usually about Helseth, whom he wanted to send away to school in Somerset Isle, the province farthest from the Imperial city. Berengia made no effort to avoid these altercations. The Nightingale, after all, had no interest in a smooth, unruffled life, and besides, he thoroughly enjoyed making up afterward. Occasionally, Berengia would take the children and retreat to their old apartment, declaring she wanted no more to do with him, but he would always come to fetch her back, and she would always let herself to be fetched back. It was ineffable, like the rising and setting of Tamriel's twin moons. She was 6 months pregnant before she finally deciphered the location of the last staff piece. An easy one, since every Dark Elf knew where the Mount of Dagoth was. So she became pregnant for the 4th time, although it's very hard for elves to get pregnant. When she next quarreled with the Nightingale, she simply left the city with Edwyr and rode hard for High Rock and Wayrest. The Nightingale was furious, but there was little he could do. His assassins were rather inept, and he dared not leave his seat of power to pursue them in person. Nor could he openly declare war on Wayrest. He had no legitimate claim on her unborn child. True to form, the Imperial city's nobility had disapproved of his liaison with Berengia, as they had so many years ago of Tiber Septims, and were glad to see her go. Wayrest was equally distrustful of her, but Edwyr was fanatically loved by his prosperous little city-state, and allowances were readily made for his eccentricities. Berengia and Edwyr were married a year after the birth of her son by the Nightingale. What? In spite of this unfortunate fact, Edwyr doted on her and her children. She in her turn did not love him, but she was fond of him, and that was something. It was nice to have someone, and Wayrest was a very good place for children to grow up, while they waited and bided their time and prayed for the champion's success in his mission. She kinda left for good, huh? Berengia could only hope that he wouldn't take very long, whoever this unnamed champion was. She was a Dark Elf, and she had all the time in the world. All the time, but no more love left to give and no more hatred left to burn. She had nothing left, nothing but pain and memories, and her children. She only wanted to raise her family and provide them a good life, and be left to live out what remained of hers. She had no doubt it was going to be a long life yet, and during it she wanted peace and quiet and serenity of her soul as well as her heart. Peasant dreams, that was what she wanted. That was what the real Berengia wanted. That was what the real Berengia was. Peasant dreams. Pleasant dreams. Well, that was quite something, this book. So it did not address what happened next. The events of the Elder Scrolls Arena, you are playing the champion. You needed to find the pieces of the Staff of Chaos, like a little bit of the Legend of Zelda style. Defeat Jagarthorn, so Uriel Septim, the emperor that died in this game, could be his normal self again. And I don't think Berengia was never mentioned at all again. She might still live. We'll never know. Maybe this needs to be addressed in a future tale. Although we've read the other book about Berengia. Let me just peek. Or was it biography? How it ends again. Yes, she plans to return to Mournold after Edward's death. Happy, unremarkable life. So she isn't dead yet? Well, it's a truly great character that Bethesda should address in future Elder Scrolls games. Because that story was quite something. Might even be the longest story and the longest books in Oblivion. And yeah. I almost forgot there is a game besides these books. Alright, we'll see the next time if there are more books to read here, and then we finally get to go outside to find some long-awaited action.